Welcome to Group H of the World Cup of Great Performances, where we'll round up the final four contenders bidding for a place in the next stage. First up, it's Raymond van Barneveld's epic victory over Phil Taylor at the Circus Tavern on New Year's Day 2007.
I think when you look at this game, you do categorise it as one of the greatest games of all time, and to a lot of people it is the greatest game of all time, and they might ask the question, why wasn't this part of another group? Well, of course, this was at the Circus Tavern. It was the last one at Circus Tavern before it moved over to Alexandra Palace. But I think everybody pretty much knows where they were when this game was played, and it's impossible not to include this in our competition.
Yeah, I mean, winning 7-6, they're both averaging 100, which at that time was an incredible feat for both players to be doing that. Taylor, he was on a 21 unbeaten stretch at the Circus Tavern, but people did fancy Barney to give him a game, and I think the victory made people potentially think Barney was going to go and win a lot more.
Very much so. I don't think at that time when Raymond lifted the trophy, he thought that was going to be his last World Championship. Now, he hasn't won another one since. He still has the availability, of course, of winning another. That's entirely up to him. But the performance itself was remarkable. The 180 hitting was remarkable. The final leg was just the same. Yeah. And it was an incredible performance that was very worthy of winning a world title.
It's amazing when you, at the time watching it, it's just you going down to the wire and you just think, oh, Taylor's just bound to just pinch it. It just felt like he was going to win it. He couldn't, for some reason, although me growing up and watching the BDO throughout the 90s and seeing Barney's rise, knew all about how good he was, but you just thought, oh, he's just probably going to fall short. So for him to have that mental strength to go and beat him when it really mattered in that design.
Well, he won the bullseye, which was a key thing. And the bullseye rule changed pretty much within 24 hours after that because of the controversy around the bullseye shot in that final leg. But to be able to find a 180 in that last leg, another one, and to win that final in a sudden death shootout, it was, of course, deja vu for Phil Taylor. He'd been there a couple of times before, but it wasn't his time, it was Raymond's time.
Next up, we're going to look at another agonising defeat for Phil Taylor against John Parr, another 7-6. I mean, I think of the defeats he suffered in world finals, 3 of them were 7-6, Taylor. So it took, for people to beat him, it generally took a Herculean performance, and that was true of John Parr's.
I think more so with this one in 2003, because John was playing exceptionally well at the time. He had this reputation as a scrapper, and he wasn't noted as being the best averager on tour, but when he got chances, he would take chances. And the last shot in this performance was very tantamount for that, in my opinion. But John was able to get a good start and able to stay with Phil in the first 6 sets, and then find a little bit of a gap and get a real rush of adrenaline early and maintain that to the very end. It's just a question of staying with him, getting a little bit of a lead, and when you get a shot, you take a shot. And that's what John Parr's career was all about.
Yeah.
It was a fabulous display, especially considering that Phil had not lost at Circus Tavern since 1994. That is 9 years.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I mean, the thing is, although we say only back then 96, and over that many sets, it's still a very, very good average. But I think it's obviously not as high as some of the others in this whole series. But it just goes to show it's about the context of pressure, that situation. You can't get in a more high pressure situation. And when someone's averaging very close to 100 and you're still able to get the key shots, the key legs.
Well, John had his own pressure in this match. It wasn't just about trying to beat Phil, because he'd been beaten by Phil so many times convincingly. But there were a lot of whisperings around the time saying, yes, John Parr's a world champion from 1994 in the BDO, but that tournament was fairly weak, according to a lot of the gossip. So for him to come and legitimise that by beating Phil in another venue 40 different title. Just goes to show how great this performance was and how warranted it was.
Now we're going to go much closer to present day, this most recent World Championship, and Dave Chisnall, well, it was, how can you describe that victory over MVG other than it was 5-0?
I think Dave would probably say it's about time, considering the fact that he had not beaten Michael in 27 matches previous to this. The odds for Michael going into this were overwhelming, and I don't think many people gave Dave a chance. You looked at some of the games he played previously in the tournament, did well against Dimitri Vandenberg, and you just thought that maybe if he got a good start, he would have a chance. But we'd said that so many times leading into matches against Michael in so many different tournaments, and he had not been able to do it. A lot of us thought that maybe he would never beat Michael again, but it just goes to show he kept banging on that door, and when he finally got the start he wanted, he was able to sustain an extraordinary level of performance, and this is one of the best performances a World Championship has ever seen.
Aside from his 107 average, the 14 180s, the 300 plus checkouts, talk us through that leg.
Well, that leg, you're thinking Dave Chisnall is likely to hit a 9-darter. He's incredible at 180s, as everybody knows. But the fact of the matter is, we will look back at that leg for one of the shots that didn't win the leg, and it's Michael van Gerwen hitting 141 on double 12 to set up his own shot. It was laughable, and it just goes to show, under the big pressures of the game, Michael and the likes of Dave are still able to entertain people in the audience and at home and do the most ridiculous things.
Yeah, because I think he knew, Chizzy just, missing the double 12 for his 141, MVG doing it with a bit of a smirk, but then Chizzy able then to hit double 6 to get his 11-darter in the end.
Yeah, one of the best legs ever.
Yeah.
We talked about the James Wade Phil Taylor leg at the match play one year, which was ridiculous. But the fact of the matter is, this one just had a little bit extra, and it may well go down as the best leg ever seen at the World Championship. But I suppose that's for another time.
That did win Performance of the Season, the PDC's official award. And then a couple of seasons earlier, our final entry is Daryl Gurney, because he also won that award. But in the Players' Championship final against Michael van Gerwen, 11-9, a result that few saw coming because of MVG's dominance at that time. He was winning absolutely everything.
He was. Wherever he went, European Tour, Players' Championships, World Series tournaments, wherever he went, he was dominant. And when you're playing someone in that sort of era and you get him in a final, you aren't really under that much pressure. But the fact of the matter is, Daryl would have put himself under pressure. He knows at that time that going into the match, he has got a good chance of winning. Again, if he gets a good start. But from his experience of playing Michael and beating Michael in a European Tour event 3 years previously, he knew that he could do it. And on the previous occasion, he did it with a broken hand. So he knew that when he was fully fit, he had the capabilities. And I have to say, this performance was probably a little bit easier for him in a final because he'd already won the World Grand Prix previously. But this really was one of those complete performances from Daryl Gurney. Not an isolated incident either, but I think it was very fitting that the tournament was won by the odd leg on the bullseye. It was a superb performance.
Yeah, the finish to end it, I think. And not taking nothing away from the Players' Championship finals, but it's not one of the biggest majors. So for a victory like that to resonate with people so much that it can win the award really summed up how great it was and how it got everyone on the edge of their seat.
Very, very much so. I couldn't agree with you more, Chris, because yes, I won the Players' Championship finals. I know it's place in the sport, but this performance just belongs at a slightly higher level, in my opinion, because you've got the 4,500 people in Minehead completely gripped to the brink, and Michael and Daryl deserve all the credit for that, and ultimately Daryl won the title and thoroughly deserved it.
Right, well, all Sporting Life followers need to do now is vote on the poll below, and the winner will go through to the next round.